Something shifted the moment he called me that afternoon. It was in the way he asked, a little too casually, if I could come over and help with the garage clean-out. It sounded like any other favor between best friends, but my chest tightened, in that stupid familiar way it always did around him. I said yes, of course. I always do. I've known Jay since middle school. He was loud, reckless, and impossible to ignore. The kind of guy who pulled you into trouble with that damn grin of his and somehow made you grateful for the chaos afterward. We clicked instantly, even if we couldn't have been more different. He thrived in crowds, I stuck to the edges. He was fire. I was the steady, quiet presence that never quite figured out how to stop burning for him, but I never said anything. I buried it, tucked my feelings into the same box where you keep childhood crushes and things that can't be real. Jay was straight. Or at least that's what I always believed. He flirted with girls without thinking, dated in fast bursts, then shrugged it off like nothing. Meanwhile, I'd watch from the sidelines, telling myself I was happy just being near him. This weekend felt different, though, not just because he'd asked for help, but because of the context. His older brother, Mason, was finally moving out of the family house, and Jay had offered to help sort through the old garage they used to share. Mason was the golden child growing up, confident, collected, always just out of reach in that older brother way. I barely knew him, honestly. We'd nod hellos in the hallway, exchange the occasional joke if we passed each other at Jay's. But that's not why I felt uneasy. It was Jay's voice on the phone, that strange mix of nerves and excitement when he said, "It's kind of a mess, man. I could use the company. You know, moral support." That's what did it. So now I'm here, standing in Jay's driveway, watching the late afternoon light slant across the cracked pavement and stretch shadows from the overgrown hedge. The garage door is already open, and I can hear him cursing softly inside, probably tripping over old hockey gear or one of Mason's ancient speaker systems. I take a deep breath before walking in. The air smells like dust, oil, and that faint scent of cedar that always clung to Jay's sweaters after winter. It's dumb how familiar it feels, like walking into a memory. He looks up when I step inside, his face lighting up like it always does when he sees me. That alone nearly undoes me. "There you are," he says, brushing his hair back with a grease-streaked hand. He's wearing a tank top, one that hangs a little too loose on his shoulders, exposing that freckle above his collarbone I never should have memorized. "Thought you bailed." "Never," I say, trying to sound easy, casual, like my heart isn't doing somersaults just from being near him. He tosses me a rag and gestures at the pile of boxes stacked against the far wall. "All right, let's find out how much crap my brother hoarded in here. You take the left, I'll take the graveyard of skateboards and regrets on the right." His laugh echoes in the garage, light and unbothered. I smile, even though my stomach is doing flips. As we dig through boxes and pass around half-broken gadgets and dusty photos, I steal glances. His jaw clenches when he's focused. He sings softly under his breath when he thinks I'm not listening. And sometimes his knee brushes mine casually, but each time it happens, my pulse spikes like I've been shocked. He doesn't pull away. It means nothing, or it means everything. Maybe I'm just tired of guessing, but I can already feel it. Something's coming. This weekend, this garage, the boxes of forgotten memories. It's all leading somewhere. I don't know where yet. I just know that when Jay looked at me earlier, his smile lingered a little too long, and for the first time in years I wonder if I've been wrong about what's possible. And then I hear the front door open, heavy footsteps on the gravel. Jay glances up, wiping his hands on his shorts. Mason's here. I swallow hard. Because this story, it's not just about Jay. It starts with him, sure, but Mason, he's about to change everything. Jay and I first became friends because of a broken pencil. 7th grade math class. He forgot his and I had a spare. He took it without asking, said something like, "You look like the type who brings extras," and grinned like he'd just won something. I rolled my eyes, but I remember smiling too, because even then he had that way about him. Loud, disarming, too charming for his own good. After that, it was like we just stuck. He dragged me into his world. Sleepovers where we stayed up playing, video games until dawn, summer bike rides that turned into races, Winter break snowball fights that left me half buried under a pile of laughter and frozen socks. I think what made it special was how easy it always felt. He never made me feel like I had to change. He never questioned the silences, the way I thought too much before I spoke, or why I'd sometimes pull away from big groups. He just got me, and maybe that's where the problem started. When someone sees you like that, really sees you, it's hard not to start hoping for something more, even if you know you probably shouldn't. By the time we were 17, we were practically inseparable. He'd crash at my place whenever things at home got too loud or too quiet. His parents fought in long, tired silences and sharp words behind closed doors. He said my room felt calmer, like breathing underwater. I never told him that having him there made me feel more alive than anything else. Today felt almost like those old times, until Mason showed up. He was taller than I remembered, with that same quiet confidence and unreadable expression. He nodded at me as he came in, then gave Jay a quick slap on the shoulder and a sarcastic, "Thanks for finally helping." Jay shot back, "Hey, I'm here now. Be grateful." I watched them laugh together, tossing jabs and half smiles, and it hit me. I was seeing a side of Jay I'd never really witnessed. Not performative or loud, but softer, more grounded. Mason had that effect, and I couldn't help noticing the way Mason glanced at me once or twice as if trying to place me. Jay and I got back to sorting boxes while Mason took a call outside. Jay found an old photo tucked in one of the lids, us at 14. Faces flushed from biking all afternoon. Jay holding a melting ice cream cone, me grinning awkwardly beside him. "Damn, we were such dorks," he said, nudging me with his elbow. "You still are," I replied, bumping him back. He smirked. "Fair, but admit it. We peaked at 15. I laughed. "Speak for yourself. I'm still in my prime." That earned a real smile from him, one that lingered as he looked at me. Not for long, just a heartbeat, but it was there. A second too long, his eyes softer than they should have been. I looked away first, pretending to study a box of old video game controllers. Later, we found out Mason had to leave to grab something from their storage unit across town, which left Jay and me alone again. The garage had gotten unbearably hot, so we moved some boxes into the house where the AC hummed and the living room smelled like cinnamon and old books. We both collapsed onto the couch, our legs touching at the edge. It wasn't intentional, but neither of us moved. Jay leaned back, resting his head, eyes half closed. You ever think about just getting in the car and driving until you don't recognize anything? Every day, I said, and it came, out quieter than I meant it to. He turned his head, looking at me like he hadn't expected a real answer. "I think about leaving," he said. "Not forever. Just long enough to figure some stuff out." "What stuff?" Jay hesitated. He never hesitated, but right then he did. "Just life," he said. "I don't know, forget it." I wanted to ask more, to press, to understand what sat heavy on his chest. But instead I nodded. "If you go, take me with you." He looked at me, and for the first time in years, he didn't laugh off what I said. He just looked. We were interrupted by a loud thud upstairs, followed by a muffled curse. Jay winced. "Crap, that's probably the spare bed collapsing again. I was supposed to fix that last week." I raised an eyebrow. "You still expecting me to stay the night?" "Of course," he said, like it wasn't even a question. "You're not getting out of it. Besides, the AC in the guest room's busted. You're better off in mine." My throat tightened. "Your room?" He nodded casually, already heading up the stairs. "You can take the bed. I'll crash on the floor." The words hung in the air longer than they should have. The floor. Not the couch. Not the other room. His floor. I followed him, each step feeling heavier than the last. His room hadn't changed much. Posters on the walls, messy desk, a faint scent of peppermint and detergent. He tossed me a pillow and some folded clothes. "You can borrow these. My old gym shirt should fit." I caught it midair. The fabric was soft and smelled like him. Something about it made my hands feel too full. As he turned away to set up the floor space, I stood there longer than I should have, clutching the shirt and staring at the back of someone who didn't realize just how much space he took up in my world. And for the first time, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he'd started to notice too. It was after midnight by the time we gave up trying to organize anything else. We'd only made a dent in the chaos of the garage, and both of us were sweaty, covered in a fine layer of dust, and too tired to pretend we were making real progress. Jay flopped onto his bed without warning, one arm slung over his eyes, the other still holding an empty water bottle he'd been using as a fan. I stood there for a second, unsure what to do with myself. "Floor's all yours," he mumbled. "Blankets down there somewhere, probably under the pile of guilt and poor decisions." I snorted, nudging the pile he'd kicked together earlier. "If I get tetanus from this floor, you're driving me to the hospital." "No promises," he said, but the corner of his mouth twitched up. The blanket was thin, barely more than a throw, and the pillow was flat from years of use. I stretched out awkwardly, half my arm on the carpet, trying not to think about how close I was to the bed. Or to him. The room was quiet except for the hum of a box fan and the occasional creak of the ceiling. I stared at the ceiling for a while, my heart refusing to settle, every breath feeling a little too shallow. "You awake?" Jay asked suddenly, voice soft and low in the dark. "Yeah." He was quiet for a beat. "It's weird having Mason move out." I turned my head slightly, though I couldn't see much in the dim light. "You guys close?" "We were. Kind of." He shifted a little, the bed creaking. "He was always doing his own thing, you know. But he was there. Now it's just a different kind of quiet." I didn't say anything right away. I understood that quiet. The kind that doesn't feel peaceful. It just feels lonely. Jay's voice came again, even softer. "You ever think about how different things would be if one moment had gone another way?" I felt that question like a stone dropped into a still lake. "Yeah," I said quietly, "all the time." Another silence, then, "You remember that camping trip in 9th grade? The one where we ended up stuck in that leaky tent?" I smiled despite myself. "How could I forget? You snored the whole night and blamed it on me." "Did not snore. You absolutely did." We both laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that felt like we were sharing something secret. "I was freezing that night," he said. "Thought I was going to lose a toe." "You wouldn't have if you hadn't insisted on sleeping in shorts." "Fashion over survival," he muttered. "But you kept throwing your jacket over me while I slept." "I never said thanks." My breath caught a little. I didn't think he even remembered that. "You were shivering," I said. "It wasn't a big deal." It was to me. The silence that followed felt different. Charged, maybe. Or maybe it was just me, caught in the middle of wanting more and fearing too much. Then, as if the universe wanted to crank up the tension, the box fan let out a horrible screeching noise and died. Jay groaned and sat up. "Are you kidding me? Of all nights?" He stood, fanning his shirt uselessly. "This heat's gonna kill me." He rummaged through his closet for a second, then sighed. "No spare fan, guess it's open window survival mode." He pushed the window open, letting in the faintest breeze, and turned to me. "There's no way I'm sleeping on this bed alone and letting you melt on the floor. Scoot over." I blinked. "What?" He gave me a look. "I'm not letting you die of heat stroke. Come on, we've shared worse. Remember the couch situation at Kyle's party?" I remembered. Vividly. I also remembered not sleeping a single second that night because of how close he was. Still, I didn't argue. Not really. I stood, brushing off my shirt, and crawled onto the far side of the bed, careful to stay on the edge. He flopped down beside me, the mattress dipping slightly with his weight. We lay there in the quiet, both staring at the ceiling. I could feel the warmth of him beside me, the rise and fall of his chest just inches away. "Better," he murmured. "Yeah," I said, though my heart was racing. After a while, he rolled onto his side, facing me. I could feel his eyes on me even if I didn't look back. "You always smell the same," he said suddenly. "Like books and mint or something, comforting." My throat went dry. "Is that a good thing?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, it is." I turned slightly, just enough to meet his gaze. The light from the hallway caught his face faintly. His eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. His hand moved, just a little, rested near mine. Close enough to touch, but not quite. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what this meant. But I didn't move away. Neither did he. I could feel everything, every nerve in my hand alive, aching to close the space between us. Jay's voice came again, a whisper. You ever feel like something's been there for a while, but you were too scared to look at it? I swallowed. Yeah. What if we looked? The question hung in the air, heavier than anything else he'd ever said to me. I looked down at our hands, so close now that a small shift would bring them together. My fingers twitched, just slightly. His did too. And still we didn't move. Because we both knew, the moment we touched it would mean everything. I didn't sleep much that night. Even with my eyes closed, my body was painfully aware of Jay beside me. His quiet breathing, the slow rise and fall of his chest, the faint scent of his skin mingled with detergent and dust. Our hands stayed where they were, close enough to feel the heat between our fingers but never quite touching. And still that tiny space carried more electricity than anything I'd ever felt. At one point, he shifted in his sleep, and the back of his hand brushed against mine. A light touch. Accidental. But I didn't pull away, and neither did he. We lay there like that, in suspended silence, until sunlight began to press gently against the edges of the curtain. Morning was crawling in, uninvited and far too early. I could hear birds outside. The house creaked as it woke. Jay stirred and let out a quiet sigh. You awake? He asked, voice hoarse with sleep. Yeah, I whispered. He was still turned, toward me. His hair was a mess, one side flattened from the pillow. He blinked a few times, then looked at me fully like he was seeing me for the first time. You didn't sleep either, huh? I shook my head. Not really. A beat passed. Then he said, Was it weird, me asking you to sleep here? Yes. No, I said. You sure? I hesitated. It wasn't weird, just different. Jay rolled onto his back, staring up at the ceiling. You ever feel like we've been on the edge of something for a long time? My chest tightened. I knew what he meant. I'd felt it too. This slow-building current between us that neither of us dared to name, always finding excuses to stay close but never crossing the line. Not until now. I think I've been trying not to think about it, I admitted. His lips curved slightly. I haven't been doing a great job at that either. Silence settled in again, but it was different now. Thicker, heavier. Finally, he turned his head to look at me. His eyes searched mine. Can I ask you something? Of course. He licked his lips, then looked away like it was hard to say out loud. That night at Kyle's, when we shared the couch, did you feel it then too? My heart stopped for a second. He remembered. I did, I said softly. I thought I was imagining it. I thought maybe you'd pull away. I wanted to, I said, but I couldn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because I did. He let out a breath that sounded like relief and something else. Maybe fear. Jay, I said, pushing myself up slightly on one elbow. What is this? Between us? I need to know I'm not the only one feeling it. You're not, he said, quickly like he'd been waiting for the chance. You're definitely not. He sat up too, knees drawn to his chest. He wasn't looking at me now. He was staring at the floor. I've been feeling it for a while, he admitted. But I didn't know if I should say anything. I didn't want to mess things up. You're my best friend. And this whole time I've been acting like I'm fine, like we're just friends, but every time you laugh at something I say or look at me for too long, I feel like I'm falling into something I can't stop. I swallowed hard. My throat felt thick. I get scared too, I said. Not just of what this could mean, but what it would change. I don't want to lose you, he said, voice almost breaking, but it's getting harder to pretend. Jay, I whispered. You don't have to pretend anymore. He finally looked at me. Really looked. I think I like you, he said, and it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet and trembling, like a truth he'd been afraid to believe. More than like you. I think I've been in love with you and didn't know what to call it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My heart felt like it was about to collapse in on itself. Say something, he added quickly, almost panicked. If this is too much or... I moved before I could stop myself, sitting up fully and reaching out. I took his hand. He went still. I love you too, I said. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know if I was allowed to. But I do. I've been in love with you for longer than I'll ever admit. His eyes went glassy, and his fingers tightened around mine. I can't believe we've been dancing around this for so long, he said, letting out a shaky laugh. We're such idiots. Total idiots, I agreed. He gave me a small, uncertain smile. So now what? I looked at him. Really looked at him. All of him. Messy hair, tired eyes, his uncertainty and fear wrapped around so much hope. We take the first step, I said. We stop pretending. He nodded slowly. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he asked, Can I kiss you? My heart stopped, then restarted all at once. Yes. He leaned in, hesitating only for a moment. I could feel his breath, warm and trembling. Then finally his lips met mine. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't practiced or polished or movie-worthy. But it was real. Soft, slow, and full of everything we'd held back for too long. His hand slid to the side of my neck, holding me like he was afraid I might disappear. I reached up and rested my fingers on his chest, feeling his heartbeat race under my palm. When we pulled apart, we stayed close, foreheads touching, breaths mingling. Jay let out a shaky laugh. That was... Yeah, I said, grinning stupidly. That was. He kissed me again, this time a little more certain. A little more like he'd been waiting his whole life for the permission. And when we finally lay back down, tangled together in the soft gray light of morning, I didn't feel afraid anymore. I just felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Jay's fingers were still tangled in mine when we eventually rolled apart, just enough to see each other clearly in the soft morning light. Neither of us said anything right away. We didn't need to. Everything that had been left unsaid for so long now lingered between us, not as tension, but as something softer, warmer, familiar, and new all at once. He broke the silence first, voice husky. So, do we tell people we're dating now, or is this more of a secret lovers, meet-in-the-dark kind of situation? I laughed, the kind that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Secret lovers? What is this, a soap opera? Jay grinned and leaned in to nuzzle my shoulder briefly before flopping onto his back dramatically. Just asking. We should define the terms, right? Terms? You know, the I love you but don't hold my hand in public kind of stuff. I rolled onto my side to face him, propping my head up on one hand. I'm not saying we need to shout it from the rooftops, but I'm not going to pretend it's not real either. He nodded, a softer smile playing on his lips now. Good, because I don't think I could go back to pretending. We lay there in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. His foot brushed against mine under the blanket and didn't move away. I found myself watching the way his chest rose and fell, how the corner of his mouth twitched whenever he got lost in thought. You know, I said eventually, I always wondered if maybe I was reading you wrong. Like I'd look at you and I'd think he's looking at me like he wants to say something. But then you never did. He turned his head, eyes locked on mine. I was terrified. Of me? Of losing you. Of saying the wrong thing. Of messing up the only good, solid thing I had in my life. My chest ached, but in a good way. The kind of ache that comes from hearing something you needed but never expected. You couldn't mess this up, I said, brushing a strand of hair off his forehead. Even if you tried. Jay looked at me like he wasn't sure he deserved that, then reached up and gently held my wrist, his thumb sweeping over my skin in slow circles. Do you think this us can really work? The question hung there, serious now. Not a tease, not a joke. I nodded. Yeah, I do, but it won't be perfect. We'll argue. And over stupid things, I added. I'll probably hog. The blanket. You already do. He laughed again, this time louder, less guarded. But we'll be honest, right? I squeezed his hand. Always. He shifted closer until our foreheads touched, noses barely grazing. You know you're gonna have to come over a lot more now. Are you inviting me to move in already? I mean, I wouldn't say no, he teased. I kissed him again, just a soft press of lips. Nothing rushed, nothing heavy. Then I pulled away, brushing my fingers over the scruff on his jaw. Let's just start with breakfast. Jay groaned dramatically and threw an arm over his eyes. Ugh, don't ruin the moment with reality. Hey, you confessed. Your love, not your aversion to pancakes. He peeked out from under his arm. Wait, are you making pancakes? Only if you keep kissing me like that. He smirked. Done deal. We eventually dragged ourselves out of bed reluctantly, limbs brushing, hands grazing as we moved through the morning routine like a dance we hadn't rehearsed, but somehow knew by heart. It was all the same, and yet nothing felt the same. Every glance carried weight. Every touch made my skin hum. At one point, while I was flipping pancakes at the stove, Jay wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. You look good in my shirt, he mumbled into my neck. I leaned back into him without thinking. That's because your shirt likes me better. He chuckled, low and content. Yeah, well, I think I do too. After breakfast, we ended up on the couch, legs tangled under the blanket we'd dragged from the bed, a half-drunk cup of coffee abandoned on the table. Jay rested his head against my chest, listening to the steady beat of my heart. I'm scared, he said suddenly, voice quiet again. I didn't pretend not to understand. Me too. He looked up at me. But I'm more scared of what life looks like without you. My throat tightened and I bent down to kiss the top of his head. We're in this now, I said. Whatever happens, we figure it out together. He nodded against me and I felt the smallest shift in his body, like he was letting go of something heavy. Okay, he said. Together. And that word, simple, small, and filled with everything we'd been too afraid to say, settled around us like a promise. Jay's truck rumbled to life as I slid into the passenger seat, the late afternoon sun casting long streaks of gold across the dashboard. We were packed up and ready to head home, the lake house behind us already starting to feel like a memory. I glanced over at him as he adjusted the rearview mirror, his hand brushing mine where it rested between us on the console. He didn't move it away this time. He looked over and smiled. You sure you didn't leave anything? Phone charger, shirt, my dignity? You lost that when you snored like a chainsaw last night. I do not snore. You really do? He rolled his eyes but chuckled, and that was all I needed. His laugh, the way he looked at me now without hiding, without dodging. Everything between us felt different, but not in a way that made me nervous. It was a quiet sort of rightness, like we'd been circling this moment for years, and just now found our way back to it. As we pulled onto the road, he reached out and took my hand without looking, weaving his fingers through mine like it was second nature. My heart did this ridiculous little leap, like it couldn't believe we were finally allowed to do this in the open. You know, he said after a few minutes of driving, I've never brought anyone to the lake house before. Not like this. Not like what? Not someone who mattered. I didn't respond right away. I just turned my hand in his, palm to palm, and squeezed gently. The road curved ahead of us, winding through trees still turning orange and gold. It felt symbolic in a way, this transition, this stretch of something new we were navigating together. Do you think your brother suspects anything? I asked, half teasing. Jay smirked. After you both ganged up on me about that terrible movie I love? I think he suspects you're a bad influence, maybe. You mean the movie where an alien falls in love with a toaster oven? It's a metaphor, he protested, laughing as he stole a glance at me. Besides, you're not getting out of movie nights just because we're dating now. Oh, is that what this is? Dating? His smile faded into something softer. Isn't it? I nodded slowly, watching the sunlight shift across the windshield. Yeah, it is. A comfortable silence settled between us again. There was no rush to fill it, no panic about what came next. It was enough just to be here, side by side, heading home. The hum of the engine, the warmth of his hand in mine, the way his thumb kept brushing back and forth across my knuckles like he couldn't help himself. It all felt like a promise we were making without needing the words. When we finally pulled into my driveway, neither of us moved right away. The sun had dropped lower, casting everything in that amber glow that made the ordinary look cinematic. I looked over at him. He was staring straight ahead, but his fingers hadn't let go of mine. "Stay for dinner?" I asked. He turned to me, brow lifted slightly. "You sure? I thought your parents were coming by tonight." "They are," I said, "and I want you to be here." There was a flicker of something in his eyes, uncertainty maybe, but it passed quickly, replaced by a nod and a quiet "okay." He got out and walked around the truck, opening my door like he always used to as a joke, bowing slightly. But this time, when I stepped down and stood in front of him, he didn't pull away. Instead, he reached up and adjusted my collar, his fingers grazing my skin in that familiar, reverent way that always made me forget how to breathe. "I'm really glad I asked for your help that night," he said softly. "I am too." He leaned in then, pressing his lips to mine with the ease of someone who knew this was where he belonged. It wasn't a grand kiss, it didn't need to be, it just fit, like us. As we walked to the front door, I laced our fingers together again and gave his hand a quick tug. "By the way," I said, grinning, "you're gonna have to tell the toaster oven love story to my mom." He groaned. "We're doomed." "Nope, we're just getting started." And with that, we stepped inside, into a house I'd walked into 100 times before but now felt entirely new, because this time, I wasn't walking in alone.